In Notes from Underground, he makes a poignant statement about authoritarian control. I quote, "All human actions, it goes without saying, will then be calculated according to these laws, mathematically, like a logarithm table, reaching 108,000 and entered in a directory. Better still, certain orthodox publications will appear, rather like our modern encyclopedic dictionaries, in which everything will be accurately calculated and specified, that there will no longer be either independent action or adventures in this world. And then it's still you who maintains this. A new political economy will appear on the scene, ready-made and also calculated with mathematical precision, so that in a flash all conceivable questions will vanish, simply because all conceivable replies to them will have been provided. Then the Crystal Palace will be erected." End quote. What he is actually talking about and referring to is science, human nature and free will. Dostoevsky writes that science shows that we people have no special character, that we are very much a piano key, that we must always obey and follow the laws of nature with our hearts, that we are determined on this basis and don't have free will. But then he says, well, if we discover all the rules of nature which regard to human nature, then all human action can be calculated to these laws, that through the use of science we can determine all human action through these laws of human nature. But by doing this, everything will be rational and terribly boring. I think people lack in the judgment of science, especially in relation to the modern world and technological development. When it comes to its association with power, science and technology are the most powerful tools in society, and we can see why by simply looking at what has happened in the past year all over the world. I would say that we have reached the point of discovering most of the rules of human nature as Dostoevsky has just described, or at least the ones which are observable, and by doing so we are also able to determine all human action through these laws of nature. Hence why most countries are in lockdown, and that it is supposed to be based on a premise that science is telling us the truth and nothing but the truth. So how can this premise ever be verified, when science, with its ever-growing power, has always been political, depending on scientific questions, the culture in which those questions arise, and the bodies of knowledge and groups from where those questions develop from? Science also maintains strong relationships with particulars, depending on its associations with tech, engineering, computations, economy. The list is endless. Therefore, science works hegemonically, whereby scientific infrastructure is stronger than others in regards to this association in society. We see this being played out by looking at the Great Barrington Declaration. When you start to think about big tech, human data collection, that the actions of humans are becoming harvested easily associates to the logarithm tables and directories in which Dostoevsky talks about, or to be more technologically specific, algorithm development. Big tech understands human behaviour patterns, being no different to understanding the laws of human nature. And this is where hyperreality comes in. Baudrillard developed a postmodern term which refers to the inability to consciously distinguish between reality and a simulation of reality. Examples would be the infusion of physical reality and virtual reality, or human intelligence with artificial intelligence. What big tech are doing is what you would call the personal hyperreality. Everything about you that you could know, your pictures, identity, interests, characteristics, communications, personality, location, even voice mannerisms. Everything is made into a hyperreality which is indistinguishable from your own being in this very moment, which thus evolves over time the more you use the internet. All you need is a hologram and you have a complete human hyperreality, something that could display your entire character. Now what does this mean? If this is completely legitimate, in which it's very likely, then Dostoevsky is right, that there will be, I quote, no independent actions or adventures in this world, and that you won't be free because independent volition, which he even states is something everyone has, will be limited, because what I am pointing out here is something Dostoevsky would have never known about. He didn't know about the internet, and he didn't think independent volition could be taken away, but he did know how authoritarian systems work their way into controlling people. And here we have the use of science or computer science to harvest data about human nature to then place it into computational algorithms for power and, I presume, control. The reason why you won't have independence is because you won't be independent, as there is a hyperreality of your entire being stored in data form. And if you want to continue down the path of AI integration, as Elon Musk seems to want to do, then this is extremely dangerous, because there will be a very viable ability to manipulate data while existing in a realm where you are unable to consciously distinguish between reality and simulation with the use of data. And then, to use Dostoevsky's words, the Crystal Palace can be built. Oh, and by the way, this is all probably done out of your consent, or to be more precise, manufactured consent. And if some sort of Crystal Palace was in some way emerge, they can then use that data for whatever they want, especially if you step out of line.